Superheroes win a lot of the time, but we also need to consider that with more than 80 years of comics, there are still a good number of times when villains inevitably will prevail. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight, and this is Top 10 Nerd. If you want to talk nerdy with me some more, feel free to follow me on Twitter at VampX13, and say hi when you do. I like it when people say hi. Today we'll be talking nerdy here on the channel in the form of more superhero defeats as we count down the top 10 times superheroes lost. Wah wah wah. Part 2. Join me and let's get counting. Number 10. Iris West is killed by Professor Zoom. That's right, Professor Zoom actually succeeded at one point in killing the love of Barry Allen's life, Iris West. Eobard Thawne, how dare you? And it would only be fixed by a continuity reset basically. Well, and prior to that, Barry Allen basically dipping from his own reality to go live in the future of the 30th century with an alternate future version of Iris who was kinda made to just exist for him having been reborn there, so it's kinda like his Iris but also not, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I mean, fair enough, it's pretty confusing. Iris died after Barry and Iris were married, and after she knew about his secret identity. Professor Zoom, as he was known then, ended up simply finding Iris at a party and phasing his hand through her head to kill her instantly. This loss hurt Barry so much that later on, when he found love with Fiona Webb, who he was engaged to marry, when Professor Zoom attacked them on their wedding day, Barry could not take it and responded by killing the villain. It was after this and a following trial for Barry Allen, where he was actually charged with manslaughter because, you know, he killed Thawne, that Barry left the main reality to go be happy with the Iris of the 30th century. Although that would all get wiped away following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, but anyways, ain't that just how it goes when crises come a-knockin'. Number 9. Sisterhood of Mutants. In case you were wondering what was going on in the thumbnail from our previous top 10 times superheroes lost list, I'm here to answer that for you now. What's going on there is Lady Mastermind is in essence keeping Emma Frost trapped in kind of like an illusion, so Emma's like trapped in her own mind. Don't worry though, the White Queen's defeat would only be temporary. This was during the creation of the villainous mutant team known as the Sisterhood of Mutants. Yeah, you might know about the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but did you know there is a Sisterhood too? It was led by none other than the Goblin Queen herself, Madeline Pryor, who had a plan for how to deal with everyone as she invaded the X-Men's headquarters. Her plan for Emma was for Lady Mastermind to keep Frost trapped within her own mind by using illusions. This, by the way, is also at a time where Emma Frost is actually one of the good guys, not the bad guys, just to be clear. However, Emma would ultimately fight back against Lady Mastermind and find a way out of this when she surprised Mastermind with her new secondary mutation, her diamond form, which makes her immune to any kind of psionic attack. Emma also kicked butt in her diamond form, landing blows that knocked Lady Mastermind into next week. Yeah, I would not want to be hit by a diamond form Emma Frost. That would hurt a lot. Diamonds are really painful, I'm sure, to be punched with. I mean, I assume a lot of things are, but diamonds especially. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want another list where we talk about the times the superheroes lost, honestly, I didn't think I was going to be able to come up with many of them, but the more I do these lists, the more things come into my mind about all of the times superheroes have lost. So let me know in the comments, and maybe we'll do a part 3. Number 8. Dark Avengers. Sometimes heroes lose, not when villains win against them, but just when villains win in general. That was in essence the case with what happened when it came to the creation of the Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were the team of Norman Osborn, who probably just called them, you know, Avengers. No dark implications from his side. That would be pretty suspicious if it's like, hey guys, look at my team, these are the Dark Avengers. Don't worry, they're totally great people and none of them are villains. Don't worry about it. Seems a little suspect. Their editorial name though was definitely the Dark Avengers from a reader's standpoint, so that's how we know them. This team of villains marketed as heroes came to be after Osborn was given the reins to create his own organization after the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why Norman Osborn, formerly known as Major Villain Green Goblin? Because at the time, he was being celebrated as a hero after defeating Queen Veronki, leader of the Skrull secret invasion on live television broadcast. Norman created his own organization known as Hammer, which was an acronym that he just liked. It actually doesn't even stand for anything. He was just like, I like the name Hammer, make that make sense, let's not worry about it. He also created his own evil Avengers team known as the Dark Avengers during a period referred to as Dark Reign. So if you want to go check it out, You can look up Dark Avengers, you can look up Dark Reign, you can read some cool stuff. Number 7. Death of Green Arrow. Ollie has died a few times, but one of the most iconic deaths of Green Arrow, I would say, comes from the late 80s to 90s series of Green Arrow. Here in issues number 100 to 101, while Oliver Queen was working to infiltrate a team of eco-terrorists, he finds himself tangled up in one of their plots, and is one of the few people who can basically stop a bomb from going off and destroying Metropolis. Well, he can stop it going off in Metropolis, I should say. He can't necessarily stop it from going off, unfortunately. He ends up getting his arm stuck in the detonation chamber and is unable to remove it without the bomb going off. Superman shows up, and somehow this ends up being a problem even Superman can't solve. Superman! In the end, Green Arrow chooses to sacrifice himself to protect the people of Metropolis rather than still save the people of Metropolis, but instead just lose his arm instead of, losing his whole life. I mean, okay. I personally just think DC really wanted to kill Oliver Queen for some reason at this point, because I think Superman had some plans prior to Ollie making the bomb go boom that could have, maybe worked. Bomb 1, Queen 0, I guess. Number 6. Death of Thor. You could say the death of Thor is basically inevitable. When it comes to the world of the Norse gods of Asgard, many of their demises are ruled by prophetic fate. Thor is no exception. We learn this in his fight against his uncle, Kulborson, the Serpent, in Fear Itself. During the Fear Itself event, Kulborson escapes from his prison and rises again. The condemned and long imprisoned brother of Odin once more rises to power by feeding on the fear of the people of Earth, naming his own champions who are each gifted a hammer. Thor in turn is destined to battle his uncle, and in so doing unfortunately die. Despite Odin's protests at his son attempting to save Midgard, Thor does do battle with the Serpent, saving Midgard, aka Earth, but at the cost of his own life. That is, of course, until he's next resurrected, as so often happens with our favorite heroes in comics. Sometimes you just gotta defeat a demigorge and then you're back to life. You know how it goes. Man, comics. Number 5. DC vs. Vampires. DC vs. Vampires is another monster mashup of an alternate reality where the heroes of that world are overrun by monsters. In this case, the monsters being, you guessed it, vampires. The loses start, of course, with the very first issue, as the premise for this tale is set up. Okay. Premise. Mary Queen of Blood has been killed, and despite being a villain, she was the only one holding back vampires from all-out war. Andrew Bennett, aka I-Vampire, attempts to hunt her killers down in order to find out what is going on and why, and discovers a plot of vampire kind to take over Earth, not just starting a war, but almost completely eradicating the human race, at least eradicating their powers. The plan involves taking over the planet, subjugating the human population, and keeping them around only to treat them basically like cattle. Andrew ends up getting proof, a vial of one survivor's blood, Lex Luthor, which also seems to be weaponized against vampires. He also then decides to head out to the Justice League to warn them, but in the end he is defeated by an already turned Hal Jordan. Hal's evil again, oh gosh, who would have guessed? And that's just the beginning of the story, so it gets a lot more vampires taking over the world, if you like that jam. I personally like that jam. I'm like, yeah. Put me in that jam. I like when vampires take over the world. Let's go. Number 4. Purple Man for President. Purple Man's presidency takes place in an alternate reality of Earth 460, and it's actually his rise to power that also creates another alternate universe, a very famous one, in fact, you could say. The reality of Earth 311, aka the 1602 reality. This is because Purple Man initially is imprisoning and killing all heroes alive who still oppose him. But with Captain America, Kilgrave sees a greater threat there. If he kills Cap, Cap will basically become a martyr to the people. So instead, Purple Man simply removes Cap completely from the playing board, but not in such a way that the populace can rally around, Cap's defeat or death. Kilgrave sends Rogers back to the year 1599, and thereby accidentally creates a superhero reality set in the past, that of 1602. Number 3. Death Metal. During Death Metal, our heroes lost hardcore. That is before they won, but still, they lost at one point. They are lucky they were permitted to stick around, as that is the only way they were able to come back from such a dark place. Pun intended. Because it's Dark Knights, Death Metal. Get it? I'll just see myself out. During death metal, the trinity of Superman, Wonder Woman, and of course Batman ended up going against Batman Who Laughs and his cohort Persephone. In the end, the first time around anyways, they lost and the world became reshaped temporarily in a darker image. The trinity were split up, with Wonder Woman reluctantly agreeing to join Batman Who Laughs. She didn't really have much of a choice. That's how she actually got her Chainsaw of Truth though, which I love that Chainsaw of Truth, it's so cool. And that's also how in the end the trinity was able to survive until a point that they could each get free and then basically rejoin back up with one another. Ultimately, Wonder Woman would sacrifice herself to save the multiverse, banishing the dark multiverse and restarting everything, setting it right again after getting a glimpse into the potential future, which we would know as Future State. But before that happened, it seemed as though the core JLA members would be trapped and defeated forever. It was a pretty hopeless time for a little bit there. Number 2. Time runs out. In some cases, antagonists aren't so much people aiming to defeat heroes, but are instead simply seeming natural occurring disasters which cannot be stopped. Sometimes that's the villain of the story. No matter how hard our heroes try, they just can't beat it. That is essentially how Time Runs Out ends, with Iron Man and Captain America being crushed by the unavoidable doom that is the Incursions. Literally crushed. The final incursion smooshed Earth 616 and Earth 1610 together, seemingly ending both universes. However, in the end, Doctor Doom would step up to the plate, accepting the power of Molecule Man and defying the Beyonders by saving the multiverse and creating his own battle world. But before all of that went down, everyone was trying to figure out how to stop these incursions, and ultimately were pretty much failing at doing so. In the end, it came down to infighting between Tony and Steve as everyone else prepared their lifeboats, hoping to preserve at least a few of the best of them. As Steve blamed Tony and the two fought on, the incursions arrived, squishing them and seemingly, at least momentarily, ending everything, but not so much in the end. Number 1. DCeased. If you thought Marvel Zombies was bleak, wait till you head to the DC version of that reality, DCeased. Here, instead of everyone being infected by a traditional zombie virus, it's more comic codified than that. In DCeased, the heroes and villains of the world instead become overtaken by the anti-life equation, which in this case turns them into hyper-violent, seemingly mindless beings driven only by rage. Basically, different versions of zombies. Poor Cyborg even ends up kind of as patient zero in this, spreading said virus to the rest of the population and infecting many beloved heroes the world over. Who are your favorite villains to see end up victorious? Which stories where superheroes lose are your favorite? Are there any you'd like to see come to the big screen, such as, you know, what we got with Infinity War? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.